Hello again, everyone. This is Chris Shera, and that's Robert Harding, and this is the Citizen Sports Weekly for a rainy, damp Thursday, July 9th, 2015. I was on vacation last week, in case you didn't notice. I'm sure you did. I'm sure we had our best viewers, most viewers ever probably last week.
Definitely cleared the million.
Jonathan Manfledo filled in for me, did a great job. Thank you, Jonathan. You're ours.
So you watched the video?
I did a little bit.
That's good.
I snuck in bits and pieces. So
You didn't watch the NASCAR part though, right?
and I skipped on that. I just forwarded right through it. So, but I'm back, and we're looking forward to picking up with some non-NASCAR talk. Nothing against NASCAR; it's just not my forte. But what is my forte? Football. Football, of course, because it's July. Hey, training camps start in less than 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, I was watching an NFL Network today. It was hard to believe this was on. NFL Network, in honor of Throwback Thursday, was airing the original broadcast, the Super Bowl VII. Dolphins, Redskins, the end of the perfect season. I actually watched about half an hour of it. It's like you just get sucked into these things.
The infamous...
Garrow, yes. I didn't get to see this. I only saw the beginning part. I didn't get to see the Garrow's gaffe. Rest in peace, Garrow.
That was the only imperfect part of that season.
You know, the thing is, if he makes the field goal, they win the game 17-0.
Right.
And they go 17-0. It would have been perfect symmetry, but the thing is they won. So
Great for newspaper
yes,
headlines, too.
Absolutely. Perfection. Still the only team ever to do it, New England. And so we're going to talk about the Dolphins indirectly in a way, because one of the things Robert and I were discussing is that Robert didn't know that the Dolphins are renovating their stadium. Maybe he knew they were renovating, but he didn't know
I knew from these new outdoor suites or whatever they're going to have.
Couch.
The living rooms.
Yeah, the living room suite.
Yeah.
So the Dolphins have been making renovations to their stadium. They took out all the seats. They're tearing up concrete and putting in new seats that have better views of the field. They're closer to the field, and it's a two-part renovation, and the second part will be done next off season, where they actually put in a canopy. And it's hard to believe in South Florida that you need to put up a roof on a stadium. I mean, it just blows my mind. And and I've been to some home games at that stadium, Dolphin Stadium, Joe Robbie Stadium, Pro Player Stadium, whatever you want to call it, Sun Life Stadium. If you got the money, we'll name it after you stadium. And, I mean, look, it gets hot there, but that's part of the Dolphins' home field advantage. And this canopy, unfortunately, is going to, I don't know if it's going to end it, but it's definitely going to have an effect, because the canopy is going to cover most of the field. I guess it's going to be it's basically going to be like, there's going to be a hole in the center where the field is. So I don't know whether the field will still be as hot as it used to be, but the stands will be covered. And the reason why the Dolphins are doing this is because if you remember the last Super Bowl in Miami in 2010, it rained at the beginning of the game. Boo-hoo. Roger Goodell got wet. His big fat cat people got wet. And because of that, the Dolphins in Miami have not hosted a Super Bowl since. Meanwhile, we put games up in the Meadowlands in New Jersey in the wintertime. I guess snow is an okay form of precipitation to the NFL. Rain is not. Never mind the fact that they've had 10 Super Bowls in South Florida. That's the first one it ever rained at, by the way. Okay? So keep that in mind. But, Stephen Ross, the Dolphins owner, he couldn't get public money. He's using his own. Give him credit for that. Is putting up hundreds of millions of dollars in renovations, and he's putting up this canopy. It just, you scratch your head. But it's so the bigwigs don't get wet and the Dolphins have another Super Bowl. And I'm just against it. I mean, I think the stadium needed some work done. It's almost 30-year-old building. Nothing wrong with changing some things around to make it more fan-friendly, make it a better stadium. But the canopy, I just think you're throwing away your home field advantage. Robert, being a Bills fan, I'm sure that not a lot of this is really important to you, but I'm kind of curious what your take on this is.
Well, as a football fan, it's interesting because, if you're a team, looking at it, into the future, say 20, 30 years from now, if you're a team with an outdoor stadium, like the Bills, like, Pittsburgh, for example, still has an outdoor stadium, Philadelphia, the list goes on, and you see that the trend is that these teams are getting, at least semi-covered stadiums and getting awarded Super Bowls. Well, gee, what do you want to do? Do you want to, if you need a new stadium, do you want to just say, oh, we'll build an outdoor stadium? Or are you going to look at something like a full retractable roof or a canopy?
Yeah.
So you can say, hey, we're in the running too. I mean, that to me is what's bizarre about this, is that we've gone from really a limited number of cities eligible for Super Bowls to now, hey, if you get a roof, hey, you're in the conversation. So, I mean, to me, it's at least looking specifically at Miami, it's silly. Weather's part of football. We see that in the playoff games leading up to the Super Bowl. The cold weather, sometimes snow, sometimes rain, heat. If you're playing in the Southwest or southern part of the United States during that time of year, weather's weather's a factor. The wind is a factor in a lot of games. So, to try and make that an issue for Miami and say, kind of in an indirect way that we're not going to give you a Super Bowl again unless you fix this, to me is kind of silly, especially after you said the history of Miami hosting Super Bowls. Weather's just another factor, and you got to live with it. But to not give Miami a Super Bowl again for that reason, pretty silly in my mind.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Dolphins will get another Super Bowl. It'd be great if they were playing it. I mean, that would even be cooler, but I don't care where they... If the Dolphins got to the Super Bowl, I don't care if they play the game at the North Pole, to be honest with you. Just get into the game. So, all right, you ready to change gears, change topics?
Sounds good.
All right, we're going to talk a little baseball, specifically minor league baseball, specifically New York-Penn League baseball, and our own hometown team, the Auburn Doubledays. And I have a column in today's edition of The Citizen, auburnpub.com/sports/Doubledays or just /sports. You should be able to find it. I basically revisit a story I did, hard to believe, almost 21 years ago. I did it in the middle of August of 1994. It was the last season of the old Falcon Park. The new park was being planned on, being built and everything, so that was in the works. But the attendance for the last season at the old Falcon Park was not good. I mean, at the time I wrote the story, they were averaging 700 fans a game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was an old ballpark. It definitely needed to go. And but people weren't coming out in droves. Really till the end of the season when they knew the last couple of games, that's when they started showing up in droves. So my point is that the attendance has dropped off again. I mean, obviously a new stadium opens up, you're going to get a big bounce in attendance. And then as time goes by, the honeymoon ends and things change. Now, Auburn's attendance has been pretty steady. I checked it out for at least the last 10 years. Between 2005 2010, they were averaging between 1,500 and 1,800 a game, which is pretty good considering our size of our community. The last 5 years, it's dropped, and a couple years ago, it was actually 1,200, which has to be the lowest attendance it's been since the new Falcon Park opened. It went up to 1,400 last year, and it's about 1,400 right now. And there's a lot of factors here. I mean, I'm not going to say one reason why attendance is down or why it can't be higher. There's a lot of different reasons, and the column gets into what I think are some of the reasons that play a factor in this. And I'm not going to go through every single one. But that being said, I think the two biggest factors why Auburn's attendance is low is, number one, dwindling population, and number two, lack of interest in baseball, unfortunately. I think a lot of people take baseball for granted, and you can watch a lot of it on television, and you can watch a lot of it on the internet with MLB.tv. You can watch every single game on the internet except for the Yankees and the Mets. And I think those things play a role, and I think obviously not as many baseball fans as there used to be too. So I think dwindling population, lack of interest in baseball per se, and then obviously the number of opportunities you can watch baseball on television and the internet have all had an effect on Doubleday's attendance. And the New York-Penn League is 14 teams. Auburn is second from last, okay? And I don't think you ever want to be last in anything or that near the bottom. You hope the New York-Penn League understands what's going on here, and as long as Auburn is succeeding at the box office, they're making a profit, that this team will survive for the long run. So we'll see what happens, but like I said, I just try to get into some of the reasons that some things have changed over 21 years, some things haven't. Robert, your thoughts? You didn't grow up here, but you've been going to a lot of Doubledays games in the 5 years that you've lived in Auburn. Your thoughts on this?
I think there's a couple angles I want to take here. One is having gone to a lot of games, and I was actually talking about this with one of our sports reporters, Jeremy Hoteling, the other day. You really see two extremes at the ballpark. You see an older crowd and families, with children. And there's really kind of that, and I fall into this demographic, kind of 20 to 34, 35, let's say.
We want to say millennials.
we could say millennials.
Yeah.
We could say millennials. Who, I mean, I'm kind of the exception. I do go to games, but, really the only time you see people, in that millennial group is, on the dollar beer nights
Yeah.
or, when something else big's going on that'll get them to the park. Could be fireworks, could be any number of things, but, you don't see them, regularly there, season ticket holders and stuff like that. So, I see that as a challenge for the team, kind of building their fan base for the future. And another challenge is just the direction that the New York-Penn League is going in. You see, a team like Jamestown, for example. Jamestown moved to West Virginia in the off-season. Jamestown had one of the poorest attendance, actually lower than where Auburn's at for the past several years. And now they're in West Virginia, doing quite well there. Attendance is pretty good. Of course, they have a new ballpark there with the college, and the team's doing just fine. So, I think that at some point that might be the reality for Auburn, that the New York-Penn League is getting away from this traditional kind of New York, based team. It could be a bigger market in New York, or it might not be. It might be a bigger market elsewhere, just like Jamestown going to Morgantown, West Virginia. So it's a sad reality of, where pro sports is at. It's a big market versus small market kind of thing again. You see the teams in New York, Brooklyn, Staten Island doing well. So maybe that'll be the eventual road, but hopefully fans go to the game. I mean, I usually go to at least a handful of games a year. It's a lot of fun. You see a lot of players who, end up being the, future major leaguers.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been players, going back to the Blue Jay days, there's players from those Auburn teams that are playing in the majors right now. And even with the Nationals, it's the same thing. I just went down to D.C. over the weekend and watched some games, and Aaron Barrett, who pitched here a few years ago, is pitching for the Nationals, and Anthony Rendon, he's hurt now, but he had a stint in Auburn for a short time, I think in 2012. So, these are future major leaguers that are playing here, and hopefully that excitement gets people to the ballpark again.
Well, one thing I didn't talk about in the column, just because I don't want to make it super long, is that you look at Syracuse in the International League, which is only 25 miles away from us. They are last in attendance in the International League. They're averaging, I think, around 3,400 a game, or between 3,000 and 4,000, which is the bottom of the International League. And there's been a lot of online debate. Is the reason why attendance down because the team isn't doing well? Is it because of years of bad marketing that's added up? Is it the location of the ballpark? A lot of people think the ballpark should have been built downtown Syracuse instead of on the north side where the old ballpark was, which is really, it's great for getting to. It's right off of 81 and 690, and it's got lots of parking, which is great. But a lot of people wish it had that downtown ambiance, which like they have in Buffalo and Rochester. So, Syracuse is kind of going through the same thing that Auburn's going through in a way a little bit differently. Why is their attendance down? And obviously this year their team not being good. They're the worst record in the International League. And another thing with Syracuse obviously is you got orange football, orange basketball. You're competing in the Crunch, which has a very good core group of fans. So you're competing against arguably Division I basketball and football, which is for Syracuse high level. In minor league baseball, unfortunately, does not measure up with major Division I basketball. Like when you get 30,000 people at a Syracuse game, they average around 24,000, and then you look at 4,000 people, not even that, coming to a Syracuse Chiefs game. You're kind of curious, is the money? You only have so much money to spend on sports. Are people spending it at the basketball games because it's more of an event and they're good and that it's a tradition? And with Syracuse, the Chiefs baseball, they haven't been good for a long time. Last year they made the playoffs. This year they're not going to make the playoffs, unlikely. The question is that just people don't want to go to baseball anymore. So there's a lot of factors here. There's no one single answer, and I think there's multiple answers to explain it. But I think in the long run, what I think Robert will agree with me on this is that we want baseball in Central New York. We want pro baseball, real pro baseball, not independent league ball, not glorified college ball. We want real major league affiliated minor league baseball in Auburn and Syracuse to do well and be here for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the issues that you hit on that I think is interesting is the location of the stadiums. And it does make you wonder, even in Auburn's case, because that stadium is away from the downtown area, away from, kind of where all the major bars and restaurants are and stuff like that. And sure, it's a short season A ball club. Would it be ideal to have a ballpark downtown? I don't know. And, there's certainly, in a smaller city, not the real estate for that. But you do wonder about, that as a factor. And the same thing, with Syracuse. You compare Syracuse and, I grew up going to Buffalo games. I've gone to a few Rochester games. Those ballparks are in the downtown areas. The Syracuse ballpark, not so much.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, and we'll try to wrap this up soon, folks, as I know we're going long, but is that if you put the ballpark downtown, then you have to deal with parking and traffic. Okay? And, I've been to Cleveland Indian games. I've been to games in downtown cities, Philadelphia, although Philadelphia's ballpark is not downtown, but just the traffic you're dealing with and the parking situation, I mean, it's a hassle. And I think if you put it downtown, you're going to turn off some people because, I got to find a parking spot. I got to park in the garage and pay $20. It's going to take forever to get out of here. I got to get my kids home to go to school the next morning or something. I don't feel like getting home at midnight from a 10 o'clock game because it took so long to get out of the parking garage. I know from going to basketball games at the Dome, I park in a garage sometimes, and it takes forever to get out. And so I don't think that a downtown ballpark, depending on where it is and what amenities it has for parking and traffic flow, would be that great. But I'll tell you this real quickly, and we'll wrap it up. I think if you could have put a ballpark anywhere in the Auburn area, I would have put it on Deauville Island in Emerson Park. Mm-hmm. With the lake in the background, okay? Now, I don't know if there's enough real estate there to build a ballpark on that island, okay? But if you could have put a ballpark there with the lake in the background and everything, I think that would have been a pretty amazing place where, like I said, you market as a tourist attraction. And I think one thing the Doubledays, if they don't do it, they need to do it, is market themselves in Skaneateles, because a lot of tourists do come to Skaneateles, which is a small community only 5 miles to the east of here, which is a huge tourist attraction during the summertime, drawing people from all over the country. And if the Doubledays can market themselves, maybe they pick up 100 people a night, which if you add up over a season, that's a lot of fannies in those seats. So, yeah. All right. Anything else you want to add, Robert?
Well, just to your point, kind of the counterpoint to my own point, just going to, I went to a couple Nationals games over the weekend. That ballpark isn't in the main downtown area. No. It is in the city, but it's in a southeastern part of the city, near the Navy Yard, where before they built the park there wasn't a whole lot of development.
No, there was auto yards. And the cool thing is they have a train station there.
Yeah.
And to me, Major League Baseball ballpark, you need a train station. You need public transportation to get there so you don't have to, drive. So obviously that's not going to happen here. We're too small. But the fact that they have a metro station right outside Nationals Park there is great. So, all right, we're going to wrap it up, sir?
Absolutely.
Hey, it's great to be back. It's great to talk sports with Robert. Trust me, it's nice to do this. I think we would do this even if we weren't filming it. We do this anyways, even though we're not filming it. We
banter in the office.
We talk in the office occasionally. Not that long, folks.
The only difference with this is we're hitting the record button.
Yep, we are. So, and folks, we appreciate your support. We appreciate you watching. And again, if you like the video, feel free to share the link. And we'll see you next week, folks. Till then, have a great weekend.